Today we're going to be stepping into the mind of a man facing his own mortality, a man condemned to death.
Wow.
Our deep dive takes us into Victor Hugo's The Last Day of a Condemned Man.
Okay.
And you're about to experience the world through his eyes, his raw thoughts and emotions laid bare.
Yeah. It's a powerful journey.
It is.
And I think what makes it so compelling is that we're not just observing this man's final days,
Right.
but we're experiencing them right alongside him.
Yes.
Hugo's writing puts you right in that cell,
Oh, absolutely.
right in that mind.
It all starts with that opening line, condemned to death.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, talk about an attention grabber.
It's bleak.
Bleak-Sturg.
Yeah, it's the reality that this man just cannot escape.
And it really makes you think about our own mortality, right?
It does.
The condemned man even compares his sentence to everyone else having an indefinite suspension on their death sentence.
Oh, wow.
It's like we're all condemned just with a question mark over the date.
That's a profound observation.
Yeah.
And it raises a crucial question. Does knowing the exact date of your death make it more terrifying? Or does it offer a strange sort of clarity?
That's what I find so fascinating about this excerpt.
Yeah.
We see the condemned man grappling with that very question.
Right.
He goes through these waves of shock, disbelief,
Right.
even a strange sense of acceptance.
There's this push and pull between the man's desire to cling to life
Yeah.
and this growing awareness that it's going to end.
Uh-huh.
It makes his psychological journey all the more compelling.
Hugo is so incredibly skilled at conveying that internal struggle.
Yes.
For instance, the condemned man vividly describes the courtroom scene,
Okay.
with the sunlight streaming through the windows, a yellow flower swaying in the breeze.
Right.
But it's such a stark contrast to the gravity of the situation.
Oh, absolutely.
What do you think Hugo's trying to achieve with this juxtaposition?
Well, I think he's highlighting the absurdity of it all. Life in all its beauty and banality continues.
Yeah.
Even as this man faces his own demise.
Right.
It emphasizes the disconnect between the man's lived experience and the cold, indifferent machinery of the justice system.
The way he describes the jury,
Yes.
they seem almost bored by the proceedings.
Uninterested.
As if his fate is just another item on their agenda.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The condemned man becomes a case file.
Yes.
A name on a list, stripped of his individuality.
Dehumanized.
This dehumanization, I think, is central to Hugo's critique of capital punishment.
He makes you see the condemned man as a person, not just a criminal.
Right.
Especially when he talks about his emotional swing.
Yeah.
One moment he's pleading with his lawyer for a life sentence.
Uh-huh.
The next he's angry that death isn't a certainty.
Right.
I mean, how would any of us react in such a situation?
There's no playbook for this.
No.
What we see in this excerpt is the raw emotional response of a human being grappling with the ultimate existential crisis.
Right.
And it's messy.
Yes.
It's contradictory.
Yeah.
It's deeply unsettling.
I was struck by his fascination with the slang he learns from his fellow prisoners.
Oh, yeah.
It's grim, almost darkly humorous language.
Right.
Things like strawberry jam on the frog for blood on a road.
Hmm.
Do you think there's a deeper meaning to his interest in this macabre vocabulary?
Possibly. I think it could be a way for him to cope with his situation,
Okay.
to distance himself from the horror of it all by adopting this detached, almost ironic language.
Right.
Or maybe he's just trying to connect with his fellow inmates,
Okay.
finding a sense of belonging in this world he never wanted to be a part of.
It's another layer to this complex character.
Yes.
And then there's that moment when he decides to write his story.
This is where it gets really interesting.
Yeah.
He's not just keeping a diary.
Right.
He's actively trying to make sense of his experience.
Right.
Leave a message for the world.
He's searching for purpose in his final days.
Yes.
He wants his suffering to have meaning, to make people think about the system that condemned him.
Right.
But he also expresses doubt, wondering if his words will just be forgotten, lost in the wind.
That doubt is crucial.
Yeah.
It speaks to his powerlessness,
Okay.
his inability to control his own narrative, even in his final days.
So he's left wrestling with this question.
Yes.
Can his story, his suffering, truly have any impact?
It's a question that lingers long after you finish reading.
Absolutely. And it's a question that forces us to confront our own complicity,
Yeah.
our own indifference to the suffering of others.
Right.
And we're just scratching the surface here.
Yeah, we are.
There's so much more to uncover as we delve deeper into this man's final days.
You know, as the condemned man's days dwindle, his reflections kind of turn inward. And there's this chilling passage where he meticulously calculates his remaining time,
Right.
lays out the steps of his appeal, the weeks of waiting, the almost casual way that his fate is decided.
Yeah.
It's like the system is designed to strip away hope little by little.
It is dehumanizing.
Yeah.
Reducing him to a timetable, a series of deadlines.
Right.
But even amidst this bureaucratic nightmare,
Yeah.
there are these flashes of humanity.
Uh-huh.
When he sits down to write his will,
Right.
knowing that it's not going to amount to much, but still thinking of his mother, his wife, his child.
That act of writing his will.
Yeah,
It's such a mundane, everyday task. But in his situation,
right.
it takes on this profound significance.
Uh-huh.
It's a way for him to connect with his loved ones, to leave a part of himself behind.
He even notes the irony that his meager possessions will barely cover the cost of his execution.
Wow.
The guillotine is expensive, he writes.
It's a darkly humorous observation.
It is.
But it also underscores the absurdity of the system.
Yeah, there's a lot packed into that statement.
For sure.
It's a critique of the economic burden of capital punishment,
Right.
the way it drains resources even from the condemned.
Yeah.
But it's also a commentary on the dehumanizing nature of the process.
Mhm.
They're going to kill him and then charge his family for the privilege.
It makes you question the very notion of justice, doesn't it?
It does.
Like, what is the purpose of this punishment?
Right.
Is it revenge, deterrence,
Yeah.
or simply a way to satisfy some primal need for retribution?
Hugo doesn't offer any easy answers.
No, he doesn't.
But through the condemned man's experience, he forces us to grapple with these uncomfortable questions.
Absolutely.
He makes us see the human costs of the death penalty.
Yes.
Not just for the condemned, but for their families,
Right.
for society as a whole.
Uh-huh.
And then there's that gut-wrenching passage where the condemned man talks about this young girl who is eagerly anticipating his execution.
Oh, wow.
She sees it as a spectacle, a public display of violence.
That image is incredibly disturbing.
It is.
It speaks to the desensitization that can occur when violence is normalized, when death becomes entertainment.
Right.
Hugo isn't just critiquing the act of execution itself,
Yeah.
but the societal indifference that surrounds it.
It's a chilling reminder that the condemned man isn't seen as a person,
Right.
but as this object of morbid curiosity.
Yeah,
And it makes you wonder about the impact of public executions.
it does.
Do they serve a purpose?
Right.
Or do they simply perpetuate this cycle of violence and dehumanization?
That's a complex question,
It is.
and one that societies have wrestled with for centuries.
Right.
But Hugo's point, I think, is that the spectacle of execution distracts us from the real issues at hand.
Mm-hmm.
It allows us to avoid confronting the moral complexities of capital punishment,
Okay.
the profound questions of life and death that it raises.
Toward the end of the excerpt, the condemned man compares the physical pain of execution to the mental anguish he's enduring.
Yeah,
He argues that the anticipation, the constant awareness of his impending doom, is the true torture.
that's a crucial insight.
Yeah.
He's not just afraid of dying.
Right.
He's living with the knowledge of his own death.
Uh-huh.
And that psychological burden is immense.
It's huge.
It forces us to question the very notion of a humane execution.
Because even if the act itself is swift and painless, the psychological torment leading up to it is undeniable.
Absolutely.
It's a form of cruelty that's often overlooked.
And I think that's what Hugo's trying to expose.
Yeah.
He's peeling back the layers, revealing the hidden costs, the human toll of capital punishment.
Right.
He's not just advocating for the abolition of the death penalty.
Right.
He's calling for a deeper understanding of the human condition,
Uh-huh.
the complexities of justice, and the value of compassion.
It's a powerful message that transcends the specific context of the novel.
Yes, it is.
But we're not quite finished with this deep dive yet.
Okay.
There's one more crucial element we need to explore. So we've talked about the condemned man's psychological journey, his grappling with mortality, his indictment of the system.
Yeah.
But there's one aspect of this excerpt that we haven't fully explored yet, and that's the power of his writing.
Yes, his writing is so important.
Yeah.
It's crucial to remember that this entire experience is being filtered through the lens of his own words.
Right.
He's chosen to document his final days, share his thoughts and feelings with the world.
And that act of writing is itself a form of resistance.
Oh, absolutely.
In a system that's seeking to silence him, erase his individuality, he's claiming his voice,
Yeah.
asserting his humanity.
Absolute writing becomes his way of fighting back,
Right.
of challenging those dehumanizing forces that surround him.
The Last Day of a Condemned Man was published anonymously,
Yes, it was.
but Hugo later acknowledged it,
Right.
and it's considered one of the most powerful arguments against capital punishment ever written.
It is.
What do you think makes this work so enduring, so impactful even nearly 2 centuries later?
Well, I think it's the combination of Hugo's powerful prose
Yeah.
and the deeply personal, intimate nature of the narrative.
Right.
We're not just reading some, philosophical treatise on the death penalty.
Right.
We're experiencing the raw emotions of a man facing his own mortality.
It's that emotional connection that makes it so difficult to ignore.
Oh, yeah.
You can't read this excerpt and simply dismiss it as some abstract argument.
Right.
It gets under your skin.
It stays with you.
Yeah, it really does.
Long after you finish reading.
And it speaks to the universality of the human experience.
It does.
While most of us will never face the condemned man's specific situation,
Right.
we can all relate to his fear, his struggle for meaning, his desire to leave a mark on the world.
Absolutely.
Hugo forces us to confront our own mortality, to think about the choices we make, the impact we have on others.
Yeah.
It's a challenging read.
It is.
But it's also incredibly rewarding.
Yes.
It forces you to look inward.
Yeah.
To question your assumptions, to grapple with some of life's biggest questions.
And I think that's the mark of truly great literature.
Yeah.
It doesn't provide easy answers.
Right.
It provokes us to think for ourselves, to engage with the world in a more meaningful way.
So as we wrap up this deep dive,
Yeah.
what's the one takeaway you hope our listener will hold on to?
I hope they'll remember the humanity of a condemned man.
Okay.
He's not just a criminal. He's a complex individual.
Right.
With thoughts, feelings, fears, regrets. And I hope it'll make them question their own assumptions about justice and punishment.
It's a powerful message. And to our listener, I'll leave you with this. If you were in the condemned man's position, how would you spend your final days?
That's a tough one.
And how does Hugo's portrayal of capital punishment challenge your own views on the justice system?
It's not an easy question.
It's not, but it's one worth asking.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time.